Hello everybody, my name is Peter Madden and I'm the Christian Democratic Party candidate for the seat of Sydney. I'd like to talk to you today about same-sex marriage, homosexual marriage, and this major issue that we are facing in both this election and elections to come. The Greens' push for homosexual marriage is far more dangerous than many people begin to realise. Those behind the aggressive push for homosexual marriage want to convince us that nothing will really change for the rest of the community if homosexual marriage is legalised. They will simply get their right to marry. That's what they want to make us think. We are now seeing an expensive and emotive advertising campaign produced by the cashed up homosexual left wing to try and convince us that it is simply a human rights issue and that we have nothing to fear. Well, I want to talk about that. They tell faith-based communities that no one will be forced to embrace their lifestyle and things will simply go on as normal. The reality is that this is a bold-faced lie. They are deliberately trying to deceive the Australian people in order to achieve a far darker goal, and they know full well that everything will radically change for both faith and for family. We must realise that it is impossible to grant special rights to homosexuals without taking away rights from the rest of the community. How do we know this? There are numerous examples from around the world where homosexual marriage has been legalised, and we see the repercussions of legalising homosexual marriage. Take, for example, Massachusetts, the first American state to legalise homosexual marriage in 2004. I want to read to you excerpts from an article written by a concerned Massachusetts father, Brian Camenker, about the very real results of the way in which this legislation has impacted on the community and especially the children. This is what Brian wrote. Anyone who thinks that same-sex marriage is a benign eccentricity which won't affect the average person should consider what it has done in Massachusetts. It's become a hammer to force the acceptance and the normalisation of homosexuality on everyone. And this train is moving very fast. What has happened so far is only the beginning. On November 18th, 2003, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court announced its Goodridge opinion, ruling that it was unconstitutional not to allow same-sex marriage. 6 months later, homosexual marriages began to be performed. The homosexual marriage onslaught in public schools across the state started soon after November 2003 court decision. At my own children's high school, there was a school-wide assembly to celebrate same-sex marriage in early December 2003. It featured an array of speakers, including teachers at the school, who announced that they would be marrying their same-sex partners and starting families either through adoption or artificial insemination. Literature on same-sex marriage, how it is now a normal part of society, was handed out to the students. Within months, it was brought into the middle schools. In September 2004, an 8th grade teacher in Brookline, Massachusetts, told National Public Radio that the marriage ruling had opened the floodgates for teaching homosexuality. In my mind, I know that, okay, this is legal now. If somebody wants to challenge me, I'll say, give me a break. It's legal now, she told NPR. She added that she now discusses gay sex with her students as explicitly as she desires. For example, she said she tells the kids that lesbians can have vaginal intercourse using sex toys. By the following year, it was in elementary schools' curricula as well. Kindergartners were given picture books telling them that same-sex couples are just another kind of family, like their own parents. In 2005, when David Parker of Lexington, Massachusetts, a parent of a kindergartner, listen to this, strongly insisted on being notified when teachers were discussing homosexuality or transgenderism with his son in kindergarten. The school had him arrested and put into jail overnight. Second graders at the same school were read a book, King and King, about two men who have a romance and marry each other, with a picture of them kissing. When parents Rob and Robin Worthland complained, they were told that the school had no obligation to notify them or allow them to opt out their child. In 2006, the Parkers and the Worthlands filed a federal civil rights lawsuit to force the schools to notify parents and allow them to opt out their elementary school children when homosexual subjects were taught. The federal judges dismissed the case. The judges ruled that because same-sex marriage is legal in Massachusetts, the school actually had a duty to normalize homosexual relationships to children, and that schools have no obligation to notify parents or let them opt their children out. Acceptance of homosexuality had become a matter of good citizenship. Is this where we're going in Australia? This is what is being decided on right now. Back to the letter. Think about that. Because same-sex marriage is legal, a federal judge has ruled that the schools now have a duty to portray homosexual relationships as normal to children, despite what their parents think or believe. In 2006, in elementary school, where my daughter went to kindergarten, the parents of a third grader were forced to take their child out of school because a man undergoing a sex change operation and cross-dressing was being brought into the class to teach the children that there are now different kinds of families. School officials told the mother that her complaints to the principal were considered inappropriate behaviour. Libraries have also radically changed. School libraries across the state, from elementary school to high school, now have shelves of books to normalise homosexual behaviour and the lifestyle in the minds of kids. Some of them quite explicit and even pornographic. Parents' complaints are totally ignored or met with hostility. Over the past year, homosexual groups have been using taxpayer money to distribute a large, slick, hardcover book celebrating homosexual marriage titled Courting Equally into every school library in the state. It's become commonplace in Massachusetts schools for teachers to prominently display photos of their same-sex spouses and occasionally bring them to school functions. Both high schools in my own town now have principals who are married to their same-sex partners, whom they bring to school and introduce to the students. Gay days in schools are considered necessary to fight intolerance, which may exist against same-sex relationships. Hundreds of high schools and even middle schools across the state now hold gay, lesbian, bisexual and transgender appreciation days. They celebrate homosexual marriage and move forward to other behaviours such as cross-dressing and transsexuality. In my own town, a school committee member recently announced that combating homophobia is now a top priority. I wonder, this is just a side note, I wonder, do we have a day celebrating heterosexual marriage in Australian schools? If this is to be introduced into Australia, are we going to celebrate the wonders of real family marriage between a man and a woman? Or is this militant and aggressive agenda going to totally obliterate all moral value teaching with a new ethics class over scriptural and biblical morality upon which our nation has been built? Back to the letter. Once homosexuality has been normalised, all boundaries will come down. The schools are already moving on to normalising transgenderism, including cross-dressing and sex changes. The state-funded Commission on Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual and Transgender Youth includes leaders who are transsexuals. He also examines in his letter how business has been adversely affected by all this. All insurance in Massachusetts must now recognise same-sex married couples in their coverage. This includes auto insurance, health insurance, life insurance, etc. Businesses must recognise same-sex married couples in all their benefits, activities, etc., regarding both employees and customers. The wedding industry is required to serve the homosexual community if requested. Wedding photographers, halls, caterers, etc. must do same-sex marriages or be arrested for discrimination. Businesses are often tested for their tolerance by homosexual activists. Groups of homosexual activists often go into restaurants or bars and publicly kiss and fondle each other to test whether the establishment demonstrates sufficient equality. Now that homosexual marriage is legal, in fact, more and more overt displays of homosexual affection are seen in public places across the state to reinforce marriage equality. Homosexual marriage hangs over society like a hammer with the force of law, and it's only just begun. It's pretty clear that the homosexual movement's obsession with marriage is not because large numbers of them actually want to marry each other. Research shows that homosexual relationships are fundamentally dysfunctional on many levels, and marriage, as we know it, isn't something that they can achieve or even desire. In fact, over the last 3 months, the Sunday Boston Globe's marriage section hasn't had any photos of homosexual marriages. In the beginning, it was full of them. This is about putting the legal stamp of approval on homosexuality itself and imposing it with force throughout the various social and political institutions of a society that would never accept it otherwise. To the rest of America, you've been forewarned. And I would say to you, as the Christian Democratic Party candidate for Sydney, to Australia, you've been forewarned. Thank you for listening.